right, welcome to Spiritual Crusade. My name is Todd Bruce, and joining me as always is Kevin Boehmer. We're here to talk about talking about classic talks. It's kind of a thing that Kevin and I have enjoyed doing and getting into as friends and as kindred spirits in the gospel. I know we talk a lot about recent talks, but we thought really digging into these older talks, there's just so much power in them. Anyway, join us here on spiritualcrusade.com. We do talking classic talks, but there's lots of come follow me lesson helps. There's lots of general conference lesson helps. There's lots of just wonderful contributors to the site. Please check us out. There's they're awesome. They're much more eloquent than I am. So without further ado, we're going to jump into Jeffrey R. Holland. It's got to be one of his first talks that he ever gave. It's called Within the Clasp of Your Arms. Kevin, you want to introduce that for us?
Yeah, I'd love to. So this is old school, and I love Elder Holland. I love the passion, just how he's able to be eloquent, but also very much like on layman's terms. I find that he's able to reach a large audience, but also do it very, very well. And this is from 1983. So this is so old school. I was actually not born when he gave this talk. I was not born for another month.
So about a month old.
Yeah. So this is old school. But it's called Within the Clasp of Your Arms from April 1983. And it's interesting reading through it because there's some very classic Elder Holland idiosyncrasies of how he gives talks, some of the things that he says, that he's just such an uplifting, you can do this, you're awesome, be better. And I love it.
Yeah, he's awesome. I love the little jokes he has, and you know the way he tells stories. He reminds me of like President Monson. You know, when I was a kid, I loved President Monson, his storytelling and the way he was able to engage you as a primary kid. And Elder Holland's one of our favorites. I think I'd be shocked if half of all of the Relief Society sisters didn't love him as well. Weren't their favorite apostle? Everyone I talked to seemed to absolutely love him to death, and I love him as well. But the apostles for their different aspects to them, right? Different ranges.
Yeah. Well, he's got so many classic talks. Like we could do Elder Holland talks 6 months in a row, and we'd still be finding awesome ones, right? So yeah.
JR appreciation podcast, really. Jeffrey R.
Yeah.
It could be just appreciating him. But we're going to try to diversify a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, this one's so good. So it's called Within the Clasp of Your Arms. And I don't know when they changed from assigned talks to letting people choose their own topic. But this one was assigned, and he talks about it a couple of times. And what's actually really cool is if you watch that general conference, his son speaks after him. I'm pretty sure it's right after him.
Yeah.
His son is sitting on the stand with him, and in this talk, the camera pans to him a couple times. But Matthew Holland, who just recently was called the 70 at this last general conference, gives a general conference talk as like a 17-year-old, just like we just saw this last conference with I can't remember their names now, Sister Kayuk and
and they were fantastic.
Yeah, and they did amazing. I thought if like Dallin H. Oaks shared the young man's talk, it would have been like people would have been upset at him.
Yeah.
And he, I thought, man, this kid's doing awesome. But
yeah.
Anyway, I also loved how he started the talk by saying, like the mule who entered the Kentucky Derby, I know I probably shouldn't be here, but I surely like the company it lets me keep. And right then and there, you can see his humility and his self-deprecating humor. In that, now he's this awesome guy, but back then he's like, I shouldn't be in this room with these people, but I'm so happy you invited me.
Yeah. I'm a nobody, or I feel like I'm a nobody right now. Yeah.
Yeah, he's still the president of BYU, but he's still like, just feels like he shouldn't be there.
Yeah.
But Anyways, topic is about basically his relationship with his son and his children, and we've talked about this a little before, and we expounded on it a little bit more last month. But it's such an important topic, and so I encourage you in no uncertain terms, and all I can do to encourage is to listen to this talk, and you will feel the spirit of it, and check it out. I'm going to do one thing here, Kevin. I'm going to pass it over to you.
Okay, go ahead.
No, I got to do.
You're doing great stuff.
You know what? I just used this account for our ward sacrament today, so I was titled Sparwood Ward.
Nice.
So change it to my name here. Much like being a bishop on COVID church, this podcast is going to come in with a lot of Band-Aids. And every Sunday, there's a new wrinkle that I got to learn.
Yeah, but it's still going to come in hot.
So with us, we're doing our best, but right off the bat, he talks about like how grateful he is to be there, but he also adds he quotes another general authority who shared a study, and basically the gist of the study was that it is becoming increasingly clear that we must teach the gospel to our families personally, live those teachings in our homes, or run the risk of discovering too late that a primary teacher or priesthood advisor or seminary instructor could not do for our children what we would not do for them.
Yeah.
Just that's such a powerful statement right there. And we're living that now, and we've been living that for the past couple of years with Come Follow Me. Right?
Oh, yeah. Well, and I just love that thought process of that somebody else can't do what we're not willing to do. Right? And if we're not willing to do something, we shouldn't really expect it of others. If we're not willing to put in the time or energy to help our children succeed. And obviously this is gospel oriented. We want our children to succeed in the gospel, but this is a principle that goes for everything, whether you want your children to succeed in many facets of life. There's lots of different things one can succeed at and live a good life in. So it's about putting time, and that church supported, right? Home-centered, church supported. And I love that our church has done studies and put the time in to figure out what can we do that's best. And it's also something that when you hear, you're like, well, of course, that just makes sense.
Oh, yeah.
Like completely.
And it's not something I would have thought, but being a parent, it totally makes perfect sense. I used to tell my kids all the time, beautiful day, go outside, go ride your bikes. Why not? Go ride, like, be a kid, go ride your bikes outside, or go do this, or go do that. And it wasn't until I started to realize that I needed to do those things with them to help them to gain a love and appreciation for those things, to help them get there. And whether it's hiking or swimming or fishing, if I do those things with them, they will gain an appreciation, and they will then have a desire to do them on their own. And it's no different than the gospel. If we're living the gospel, if we're living the teachings of the gospel, and we enjoy church ourselves, and we speak high going to church, our kids will be there as well. If we complain about having to go to church, well, what are our kids going to hear? That church is in the neck, and we don't want to be there anyway.
Yeah, or if we talk negatively about leaders or choices that people have made.
Yeah.
Oh, I wouldn't have done that. Oh, I can't believe Bishop Bruce did that. I mean, come on. Right? Like,
yeah.
And we've all been there, though. Let's be honest.
Yeah. I get it the last month or so with this return to church plan. And I just do my best to explain that it's not really my plan. This is what it takes to get back to church. I have to explain to them the difference between Todd Bruce and Bishop Bruce.
Yeah.
Todd Bruce thinks this, Bishop Bruce has to think this.
Yeah.
To take the precautions, and then when I explain that, then they're usually okay with it. But
yeah,
it's pretty easy to be a Monday morning quarterback or a backseat driver, but and that's no different than parenting. We're trying to do the best thing and the right things. And as we talked about a few months ago, this is the time. Like this, we cannot get this time back with our children, and now is the time for us to be doing the right things with them, so that they can feel of our love and see the priorities and see that they're a priority.
Yeah.
But
well, and speaking about doing stuff with your children, I absolutely love when Elder Holland talks about that. This is what he says: what I cherish in my relationship with Matt, speaking about his child that's there with him, is that he is, along with his mother and sister and brother, my closest, dearest friend. And I look at that, and that's such a big thing, because we like to do stuff with our friends. Now, there's a whole gamut of options, whether it's we have friends that we play sports with, or friends that we watch hockey with, or friends that apparently I'm into sports and hockey, or friends that we have gospel discussions with, right? Or friends that we go on double dates with our spouses with, whatever that looks like. We have different amounts of friends, but he talks about his family as being his closest, dearest friend. And then he talks about how they do everything together, whether it's one-on-one basketball, tennis, racquetball. He even talks about an inside joke with his son. Right? This guy is speaking in general conference, talking about an inside joke with his son. And I know his son's speaking after him, but still that intimate level of, I could only imagine if my dad was giving a talk like this and he brings in an inside joke about me. I'd think it was awesome. That was the coolest thing in the world. Hilarious. And then he talks about how they discuss problems, and even though he's the president of the university and his son's the president of a high school class, that they actually talk about that together. Not, I'm way better than you.
Oh, yeah.
I love it.
And I like that he said, we compare notes and offer suggestions and share each other's challenges. And I pray for him and have cried with him, and I'm immensely proud of him. We've talked long into the night. He shares another joke about his waterbed and how it's a latter-day curse upon mankind. But I appreciated that he can ask about seminary and ask him about his quorum, because he asks about all of his classes. Like you can tell that there's a legitimate amount of time and energy invested in his son's life, and he shares his life with his son.
Yes. And
I know when my kids were young, there was a Father's Day or a Mother's Day activity that they did at school. And they said, draw what your mom does. So draw your mom's favorite things. And they drew a picture of mom doing the dishes. And they drew a picture of dad going to work. And I was like, this is what our kids think we do. This is all we do is go to work and do the dishes. And I said, we have to do more things with them. And this was, 6 or 7 years ago, and my oldest was 6 or 7. They did other funny things too, I'll tell you about later, but just hilarious stuff. But you can feel his love through the pulpit, right?
Yeah. And I also think how important it is that if you're not a present father or a present spouse or present whatever it is in the relationship that you're in, you can't just jump to a problem with spirituality. Yeah. Because if you don't have normal discussions, that really feels awkward.
Yeah.
Right? Whereas if you're able to talk about tennis or racquetball or whatever, you've got that basis that, I actually will listen. Or my dad actually cares that what I did for my high school class presidency, he must actually care about me.
Yeah, and that's something actually we're trying to do in our ward with our new ward mission leader that we recently called us. He says, instead of doing a ward fast for missionary work, a blanket sweep, we're identifying very specific people that we're going to work with.
Yeah.
We identify very specific members who are close to those individuals, and we're going to fast and pray with them and invite them to have experiences. And it's meaningful when it's somebody who's close.
Yeah.
Somebody who can talk about those things in a natural way, as opposed to calling up so-and-so out of the blue and saying, hey, so this church thing, or hey, bringing my son out for, I guess Timbits and hot chocolate's a regular thing we do anyway. But
Yeah.
if we took him and wanted to chat him up about like his deacon's quorum, being a second counselor in the deacon's quorum, but we've never really talked about it other than that, it's going to be kind of an awkward conversation where I have to be a part of my children's lives.
Yeah.
If I expect them to share. And and that's a goal for each of us, right?
Yeah. And speaking about the trips to Tim Hortons, we've specifically Brittany with our older two. I usually stay home with the younger two, but she'll take the older two to Tim Hortons. And she stresses this so much, is if you want to talk to your kid, drive with them somewhere.
Yeah.
And it's interesting, and I do the same, right, when I have an opportunity, how much more open they are and willing to talk, which is wonderful. And in fact, this past week, Emmeline was hanging out. My oldest is in grade 10. She was hanging out with some of her friends from school, talking about how, and the friends were talking about how Emmeline's like the best friends with my wife. And she's like, yeah, isn't that how you are with your parents, your moms? And they're like, no. And it's such a blessing, and it's so wonderful to see, right, that relationship. And obviously, I would be a second best friend, of course. Moms are the best, and that's okay. But right? My wife's obviously put it in the time, and there's times where no, I don't want to drive to Tim Hortons to get donuts, but you want to talk, so let's go for a drive. Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. And you got to spend that time, and you got to be able to communicate. And it isn't normal, but it is the goal, right? When we grow up, I want to be like Jeffrey R. Holland and have those, and we're working on it. My kids, luckily, my boys are, my oldest is grade 7, and he still likes me, so we hang out all the time. But he still thinks I know things. How does this work? And I'm like, I have no idea, son. Let's Google it. Let's YouTube it. Yeah. But and Jeffrey R. Holland is great here. He goes now. He shares all this stuff with his son, much like Emmeline and Brittany, and their relationship and how tight it is. And he goes, how do you encourage other people to be better? I don't want to make people feel bad in comparing their relationship with their children or parents to what mine is. But he said, there are fathers who would give their life to have a better relationship with their sons. There are sons who would give anything to have a better relationship with their fathers. And he kind of finishes that little section by saying, like, don't ever give up. Don't ever stop trying to be closer to your parents or to your children. You keep trying, keep reaching, keep talking, keep praying, but never give up. Above all, never pull away from each other. And it's such a good line, and that's kind of the one main takeaway, is to always be trying, never stop trying. We were going to come up with a top 5 for this lesson, but it's just such a good lesson. So and luckily Kevin picked a 12-minute talk as opposed to last week when I picked like a 33-minute talk. It's too much to cover, but talk, we should be able to cover the whole thing and stay within a reasonable time frame. But
define reasonable.
I'm sure we'll stretch it out.
Yeah. But that is great though, right? Because even so, my specific example where I see my wife and my daughter have this wonderful relationship, and I have a good relationship with my children, right? We do fun stuff. We trash talk each other sometimes, etc. But I'll go play 21 just outside 1-on-1 basketball with my daughters and do lots of other things. But even then, I could look at this and say, oh, I'm kind of jealous that my wife has such a good relationship. So this is good guidance for me. Say, hey, don't give up. Just keep putting in the time. It's okay. Just keep trying.
And don't be jealous of your wife's relationship, because that's what your daughter is now, and there will be a time when your daughter will need her dad. And you want to be there, and you want to have those relationships in place for when she comes to you with a problem.
Yeah.
Right?
Oh yeah. And I'm not jealous. Like, I'm grateful that my wife has. I'm not concerned in the least, but I'm just using that as an example. That yeah, just keep putting effort.
Yeah, and it would be easy to be jealous or envious of another another family and their relationship, and they're perfect. They have this situation. Well, no, it's not. Nobody's perfect. I can speak to that. And all of these relationships come with effort. They're not. None of it was easy. There was trials to overcome or challenges to overcome, and they got there, right?
Yeah.
But
well, and seeing that work. So just as an example, you went on that big canoe trip, right?
Yeah.
I'm wondering how effective that was at building a relationship with your boys while you're doing that. If you noticed a big difference or.
Yeah, we had lots of time in a canoe together, just the three of us. We paddled, we worked, and we learned that we all have different roles, and we all have to fulfill our roles. Now, just because it's a 1,000-meter portage, 1 kilometer portage, or 600. No, what is it? I don't even know what it is in feet. 0.6 miles. And it's rocky and it's rough and on bad footing. Just because it was hard for my sons doesn't mean that they can only do one trip. They still have to go back and get more gear. Still have to do the less they do, the more Dad has to do, or the less. And they understood that. And there's actually a neat thing there I think it was the last week in August. Owen was carrying all this stuff out to the van for Jamie, and Jamie had nothing. And Jamie's like, "Oh, and I can take something." And he turns back and goes, "Oh, it's okay, Mom. This is nothing compared to a canoe trip." And he's like, takes it all up to the van and throws it in the back. But I said, "Well, see, it's rubbing off on it. Like he's a little bit tougher, a little bit stronger, and a little bit more willing to help." And that's kind of the goal: help build character. But
yeah, what a confidence builder, right? Like, I can do hard things. I don't even need Mom's help. Not that he doesn't need Mom's help, but what a great experience.
And it was good. So yeah, we're talking about again next year and next summer, and we'll see if it happens and where we're at. And I can't imagine being able to sneak away for 2 weeks ever again, but maybe.
But going back to that envious idea, right? Because there'd be some that look and see the pictures you post and stories you're going to tell and be like, "That's so amazing," and then be like, "I don't think I'm willing to do 2 weeks of that with my kids." Right?
Yeah, and they were the right age. I saw other people in the park that had younger kids.
Yeah.
Like that would be tough, because how do you a 6-year-old and can tell him that he's got to hold his weight? You don't. You just be happy with whatever he's willing to contribute. But no, it was a good experience and one that helped us to grow closer, and that's what life is about. And I don't know if the canoe trip was necessarily a defining moment in our relationship, but we will get them, and I have some defining moments in my life that helped me to be close to my wife and each of my kids, and it definitely is up there, but I'm not sure if it's necessarily a defining. Jeffrey R. Holland shares a defining moment for him with his son and it was years previous, so it must have been 10 or 12 years before he gave this talk, where he was stressed out. He talks about, like, he was doing schooling, he was teaching, he was a member in the stake presidency, his wife was Relief Society president of their ward. You can imagine the high stress that he's under. Things that could go wrong. And he goes, he came home one day and his son wasn't respectful of his mom and had to report it to Dad, and he lost his temper. And he goes, "I wish I could have told you I handled it better, but I didn't. And I sent him to bed, and I wasn't going to read to him, and I wasn't going to tuck him in. And I basically, he went to bed crying, and he soaked his pillow with his tears. And he goes, and then I felt terrible the rest of the night." And he shares this story about how he tried praying for blessings for his family and how hollow it felt, when he didn't do right by his son, and now he's asking Heavenly Father to bless his son. And he had a dream, and we're not going to get into the dream entirely, but like even the dream, actually, there was a defining moment in his dream where he says he meets an old timer, and he had asked his son to do this really hard thing. And he meets an old timer who's actually with his son and helping his son feel better. And he goes, "You should not left him alone to do this difficult thing. It would not have been asked of you." And I just loved that to death, because how many times do we lean on our children, expect them to be much older than they are?
Mm-hmm.
Now, Matt in this instance was like 5, but like, you know, I brought my 11 and 12-year-old on a canoe trip. I'm keenly aware of where they were at. I didn't expect them to carry a canoe trip or carry a canoe across a portage. I gave them a 25-pound bag and said, you can carry this fairly reasonably, and this is what you can do.
Yep.
And we recognized when they needed breaks, and we recognized when they needed time, and let them go. But I just loved that quote, that it would not have been asked of you. So let's be mindful of each other and what we're asking each other to do.
Yeah, that resonates so much with me, right? That whole quote, like what you said, that it would not have been asked of you. And I look and I see a 5-year-old, and my youngest daughter's now 7. And I look at her and I'm like, oh, 7's young. But when my oldest daughter was 7, that was old. And it's interesting, our thought process, how that works. And I've been there, the stress. Like he lists all these things, and as a male, I'm like, oh yeah, I understand why he was mad. Yeah. I understand why he blew up, because I've done that.
Yep.
But then I look and I see a 5-year-old, and I'm like, you got mad at the 5-year-old because he talked back to his mom like that? Right? Like,
or
whatever.
Bark at my kids all the time for supper.
Yeah.
You gonna eat or what? Are you gonna sit there all night? And Jamie goes, my wife will be like, they can sit there all night. They're welcome to. If they want a snack later, guess what? Your cold mashed potatoes will be at the table.
Yeah.
Rein it in, and it's, not cause contention in our own home, because it really doesn't matter. But it's not about the food. It's not about anything. It's that I had a stressful day and I'm home, and now I'm taking it out of my son who doesn't deserve it.
Yeah.
But yeah, I noted that too, that we were the same with our kids, that we ask a lot less of our youngest than we did of our oldest at that same age, because we needed help.
Yes.
So we've kind of got it figured out, and our youngest gets away with a lot more.
Yeah.
Anyway, at the same time, he has 3 older brothers who he's trying to keep up with, so he's figuring it out on his own as well. But
yeah.
It is an interesting thing. And I loved in the talk, he said so Jeffrey R. Holland had a moment where in his dream he realized that he had asked his son to do a hard thing, went back to find him and help him, and he met this old man. But first he meets his son, and his son goes, "Hi, Dad, we're having fun," like he's oblivious and just having a good time. And then this old man who he meets, he didn't recognize him, but he had a tough time meeting his gaze, and he was trying to thank him for helping his son. That's when he said, "This you should not have left him alone to do this difficult thing." And that's very neatly ties into that quote earlier, where you never stop trying.
Yeah.
Our children are going to be asked to do hard things. You can see it with the way the church is going.
Yep.
Things are going to progress in these latter days. And we're asked to do hard things. The prophet has asked us to have the youth really heavily involved with the gathering of Israel. And they're being asked to do hard things that we weren't asked to do when we were younger. And, we can't just leave them alone. We got to support them and help them, whether following or as parents. But anyway, to continue on, he says he woke up. He's just, and Jeffrey R. Holland says he doesn't dream very often. And when he woke up from this dream, he was just devastated. He was basically called to repentance and recognized it. And he got up and he went, and his kid was passed out in the middle of the night, and he's hugging him and saying, making promises to him that he's going to be better. He's not going to, he's going to do the things he needs to do. He needs to be the dad that his son needs. And he lists a whole litany of things that he's going to do better and help his son to be the best he could be. And near the end here, he goes, I have not proven to be the perfect father I vowed to be that night and 1,000 nights before and since, but I still want to be, and I believe this counsel from President Joseph F. Smith. And he goes, brethren, if you keep your children close to your heart, within the clasp of your arms, you will make them feel that you love them and keep them near to you, and they will not go very far from you, and they will not commit any very great sin. But it is when you turn them out from the home, turn them out from your affection, that is what drives them away from you. And I didn't like that quote, but it's a good reminder that no matter what's going on, do not leave them alone to do this hard thing. Support them and love them and be there for them. Communicate with them. It's so important. We can't do it for them, but we can be there for them.
Yeah. Yeah, and I love that quote by Joseph Smith, and I also love how Elder Holland reacted, right? Because earlier I'd said I understand his initial reaction, yelling, send the kid to bed, because I've done that. But he doesn't then go and justify, saying that he's busy, he's got this calling, because in it I think he's going to school full time, teaching half time, doing a state calling, like just busy. His wife's doing a big calling. They've got young kids at home. He doesn't just justify and say, well, I was stressed and it's okay. He has this lovely dream, but then he still acts and he says, that wasn't okay.
Yeah.
And that doesn't make it okay because I'm stressed. And at the end of the day, our kids didn't choose for us to do stressful things.
Oh, yeah. That's an opportunity for us to be better, an opportunity for Holland to be better. And it's a learning experience. Mm-hmm. And what are we going to do better next time, right? We're going to run into bumpy days.
Yeah.
We're going to run into stressful days. And what's the priority, right? And we're not going to be perfect, but we continue to try and be better. Mm-hmm. Right?
Yeah. And what tools are we going to have to learn to be able to deal with that stress, right? Because if it's a constant problem, then something needs to change. And maybe it's as simple as us getting some help or getting some sort of tools to deal with stress, or some sort of buffer zone where, you get home from work and you have 20 minutes, half an hour to yourself so that you can decompress and then be a father, right? Like whatever that looks like, it could be different for you or me or whoever. But having that constant aggression, it's just not great. That contention in the home is just not great.
Yeah, you got to take a few minutes, and that's what I've learned. I had 4 interviews today after church, and each of them were all youth interviews, semi-annual youth interviews, and each of them were very different, just depending on what we talked about. And that was one of the counsel I gave, was that what are you doing for yourself? You're doing all these things. You're super busy. What are you doing for yourself? Take some time, not a lot. You don't have to let it become a distraction, but take some time for yourself to just decompress. And as I was telling them, I was thinking, I gotta just do that. I gotta take a few minutes for myself to decompress as well. Like and it's good. And that's the fun part about being bishop. And I think it's Marvin J. Ashton, I think, said, he goes, I can tell when I'm speaking under the Spirit because I will often be learning when I'm talking.
Gotcha. That's great.
And he goes, I don't usually learn from what I'm saying. When I'm under the Spirit, I can learn, right? And I was explaining this to this youth, I was like, that was the Spirit teaching me and him that we need to take time. And but that the priority should still be my kids, family, and my calling and my job, and all these things are important. My own self are important, but do those things when it's required, and then focus on my kids and let them know they're the priority. Mm-hmm. And I love them, and then I'll always be there. There was a quote, Jamie shared it with me a while ago, but it was basically saying, like, when my kids are in trouble at 2 a.m, I want to be the person they call for help. I don't want them to be worried that I'm going to yell at them or give them grief. I want them to be there, that I'm going to answer the phone and go and help them. Yeah. And that's the kind of parent I want to be. And so, you don't want them to be afraid to talk to you. Mm-hmm.
Oh yeah. But that doesn't just happen because you want it to happen.
Yeah.
Like that's effort, that's work, that's being in control. Oh, this bad thing happened. Oh, okay. Well, I'm here to support you. How can I help you?
Yeah.
Not, I can't believe you'd make such a stupid decision.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's not to say we're perfect. And this
Oh,
example by Jeffrey R. Holland, this was a defining moment in his life with his relationship with his son that helped him to be better and do better. And he's sharing it 10 plus years later in General Conference. So it was a very significant thing in his life. And it was an opportunity for growth. And I have to imagine that, well, they're 10 years later, they're still best friends. And his son obviously got over it. He was probably over it the next day.
yeah.
And it was more for him to learn and be better, right, as a parent. So it's good, and that's what life is about, is for us to learn and teach. And that was part of the canoe trip. I had a conversation with Owen while we were fishing one day, and I just explained to him a little bit that, look, I'm still learning. I'm still, like, I've never been a parent before. The manual I read didn't explain any of this. Like, we're still figuring it out as we go, and we're just trying to do the best that we can, and we're going to make plenty of mistakes, but we're hopefully going to do more right things than wrong things, and help you to grow and become the man you're meant to be and God intended you to be. And he was okay with that once it was explained that we're not professionals.
Yeah. Anything.
No, I guess I get paid to be at work, so I'm a professional planner, but
Yeah.
electrical planner.
That's not to get too off track, but my younger brother's teaching as a gym teacher right now, and so he's technically a professional athlete. He gets paid to do sports.
Not very well, but
yeah.
No, that's all right. Well, it's awesome. That would be a fun job, I think.
Oh yeah.
So he finishes off here. He says, we all know fatherhood is not an easy assignment, but it ranks among the most imperative ever given in time or eternity. We must not pull away from our children. We must keep trying, keep reaching, keep praying, keep listening, and we must keep them within the clasp of our arms. That is what friends are for. And I just love how he ends that.
Yeah.
That it's less about being their parent. I want to be my kid's father. I want them to know that when that there are consequences to their actions. I want them to understand rules. I want them to understand how to work hard and build character and do the right things and do things that a father would teach their son. But I also want to be their friend.
Yeah.
And I got to strike that balance between discipline and fun, and the important thing for me is to share and explain, talk and communicate and build that positive reinforcement with them, as opposed to always be strictly discipline, always be all that, right? So learning, opportunity
with the focus on teaching, right? We are parents, that's what we are, but really we're supposed to be teachers. That's the big part of parenting. And teaching involves things such as discipline, but with a goal, right? The goal is that you learn this.
Yeah.
And usually when we have a goal, our discipline efforts are far more constructive and effective.
Yeah, that's right. Well, it's good. It's such a good talk, and I myself or not, I had the thought 2 or 3 times I should listen to Matthew Holland's talk as well in preparation for this. I listened to it, I want to say 3 or 4 years ago, and I just loved this talk. So Kevin, as soon as you mentioned it, and I thought I can't quite remember, but Jeffrey R. Holland's got so many good talks. And as I started listening to it, I keyed on exactly which one this was, and I was like, yep, that's a perfect one. It's a great talk to discuss and share. So awesome. Thank you for this suggestion. Yeah.
And just reminder, we really implore you to listen to the actual talk itself. Todd and I think we're both fantastic individuals, but Elder Holland just does such a good job with the whole delivery, everything. So listen to the talk itself. There's so much more to it. than what we've been able to discuss.
Give it a shout. Okay, thank you guys for listening this week or this month. We'll be back again next month. And again, check us out at Spiritual Crusade and just peruse around and learn some new things. Share this with your friends and family and anyone who you think might benefit. Even if it's just to say, hey, look at these two chuckleheads. They don't know what they're doing. We were grateful for the opportunity we have to share and to discuss ourselves. And yeah, it's great talk. Great talking to you, Kevin.
Yeah.
We'll enjoy your general conference, everybody. We're going to enjoy ours. And we'll see you shortly.